1. It was mid-December and a few months into my new job. As I entered my office building 15 minutes late that Friday morning, I stopped in the lobby bathroom to gather myself and assess the look of a long night out. Gripping the edges of the old iron sink, I looked up to find my cold, hanging eyes staring back at me, blue and bloodshot, and begging for some sort of rest. I vomited in the trash can and splashed my face with cool water before taking the elevator up to the 6th floor. Our receptionist greeted me with a cheerful hello, the kind given only hours before a weekend. I responded with a grunt. Walking into the outmoded office interior, I was met with the dull sounds of chatter, heating vents, and hard typing. The whole place smelled of disinfectant and charred coffee. I found my deskmate, Dwayne, like I did every other morning, consuming the same brand and flavor of energy drink. I finally inquired about it. "Why do you drink that shit? You work in a newsroom," I said. "Drink coffee like everyone else." "Coffee is for slave traders," he spouted, not breaking concentration from his computer screen. I asked him to elaborate, and he went on a 15-minute rant about African enslavement being the original source of labor for coffee production in Brazil, the Caribbean, and the West Indies. "I haven't forgotten," he finished in an expressionless tone. Dwayne was a tenured photographer in his late 30s and my only genuine friend at work. He was a short, angry, misanthropic Armenian with a full jet black beard and slicked back wavy hair. He was the first person I'd known who was contrarian enough to argue about the weather outside. "It's not snowing. More of a sleet, actually," he said once. "Seriously, Chris, how many black people do you know that drink coffee?" "I don't know, 2, maybe 3, I said. "Possibly none? I don't really hang out with them in the morning." "Yeah, exactly. Listen, I've got to go to a crime scene right now to take photos. You want to come?" "Not really. I'm not a real journalist," I said. "I don't cover news stories." "Yeah, but don't you writers like weird shit? Like, isn't that where you find inspiration or whatever? You know, ideas to write about." "I mean, maybe. I don't know. I don't really think about it." "Well, if R.L. Stine was here, he'd go in a heartbeat," he said. "R.L. Stine?" "Yeah, my favorite author growing up." "The kid's horror writer. He was your favorite?" "I liked the covers." Dwayne's emergency assignment was downtown, not far from the office. It was within walking distance, but cold. So he jumped in his Toyota Camry and headed 3 blocks east toward City Garden Sculpture Park. Along the way, I asked him about our boss, Margaret, specifically regarding her wretchedness towards my work. "So, what's Margaret's deal?" I asked. "What do you mean? She's married, I think." "Jesus, no, dummy. I mean, what's with the stick up her ass? She's always picking apart my columns, like my opinions in them. I write op-ed. They're supposed to be my opinions." "I don't know, man. Because she's the boss? She cares about the paper. You might not know this newbie, but her father worked for the Dispatch his whole life. He was editor-in-chief before Paul Hill took over. 40 years he worked for the paper. Then he got sick and passed away. I think Margaret feels she owes it to him to stick around and continue the good fight, keep growing what he helped build. She's probably had better job offers for other newspapers. She's graduated from Columbia." I took the intel in silence, without a retort. Dwayne parked on a nearby street, leaving us with a short 1-minute stroll in the bitter wind, during which a man with a large black duffel bag on the sidewalk began calling me over. Hey, my man! Hey, big man, come here!" "Sorry, no cash," I said. "Listen, man, I'm trying to help you out. You ever heard of Perry Ellis?" "Who? No." "Perry Ellis, man. Real nice shit. Check out this robe." "Huh? I don't know who that is. I don't want his robe." "No, man. It's the brand, Perry Ellis. Expensive shit. I will sell it to you for half off. I'll even throw in some Perry Ellis socks. Silk, baby. I'm barely getting my money back on this deal. You'd be ripping me off." "No, thank you." "How about gloves? You ain't got no gloves on, man. It's cold as shit out here. I know you need gloves. I got isotoner. Next to nothing, man. $30, and these isotoners will be under cold, cold hands. Now that's a deal. My prices are crazy." The man's hustle was worth admiring. Most people on the streets just asked for your money, offering nothing in return other than a sad story. But he wasn't asking for money. He was out in the cold streets of the winter daylight trying to earn it. Also, He was right. My hands were goddamn freezing. I bartered with him for a minute or two and bought the isotoner gloves for $20. We entered City Garden, a 3-acre urban park and sculpture garden with a spray plaza, spritzing water from the ground's multiple fountains where children could play in the warm summer months. We walked through the space and saw 2 St. Louis police squad cars to our left, parked and lights flashing, the officers out dealing with the transgression. The bit of law-breaking was unmistakable when we got closer. A homeless man, completely naked, had attempted to bathe in the fountains in the broad daylight and 30-degree weather. He failed to notice the water jets were turned off in the winter. The gray-bearded, grizzled man had been apprehended and now sat on the curb with his hands cuffed behind his back and a blanket around his thin, angular body. He was yelling something about Jewish radicals and the KGB bombing. The officers believed opium or some form of hallucinogen to be the only motive for the attempted public bath. Dwayne captured his photos of the man and the scene and annotated the event. I wanted to speak to the criminal, but the officers told me in absolutely no way would that be acceptable. I told them I was a budding journalist, which they pretended not to hear. As we returned to the office, I started my column for the day, my hangover lessening with time and black coffee. The subject was homelessness, and the object to avert passerby from handing out money. I described it as a ceaseless problem that was worth funding, but in the correct fashion. I urged people to give to the homeless shelters, maybe in the form of a check, and not to the homeless people directly with cash. They are given full-sized meals at the shelters, I wrote. They are given clothes. They are given a place to sleep. When they're striving for loose change amongst pedestrians, it's not always for booze and drugs, but you might as well assume it is. I never just gave anyone money, but I did try to give food once. I was walking back to my apartment with a date, and in an attempt to impress her, to open up a portal to her heart, I offered a man my leftover mac and cheese from Bridge Tap House and Wine Bar. "What is it?" the man asked. "Gourmet mac and cheese." "I'm lactose intolerant," he said, sneering off into space. I never offered food again. Dwayne peered over my shoulder as I typed and read enough to interrupt with some type of personal triumph. "I told you," he said, reminding me his assignment was the reason I now had a column topic. I ignored him and continued writing. I delved into not only homeless people, but the poor in general, and how the impoverished fit into society in a new light than before. It used to be that poor people were embarrassed, the middle class were content, sometimes even happy, and the rich were divine and formidable. But that was no longer the case. Now, the poor wore their crippling poverty like a badge of honor. It was a lifestyle, like a starving artist's glamour. It was the middle class who were now ashamed. They found themselves at the core of depression, a sense that their lives were no different or any more special compared to anyone else's. They lost sight of the bigger picture and blinded themselves to the luxuries they had. Overlooked luxuries that 20% of the world were without. Things like food and shelter and late-night talk shows. They had become too accustomed to it all. The only things that drifted them along this river of mopery were procreation, yearly vacations, and the occasional affair. And the rich? Well, they were still divine and formidable. As long as they were taxed more and created jobs, no one bothered them. After finishing, I printed it off and handed it to Margaret. Margaret preferred physical copies so she could vandalize the pages with red ink. Within 15 minutes of my drop-off, she sent me an email enclosing just one sentence. "This is offensive." It offered no direction or objective. She just commented on it like she was responding to a celebrity's social media post. I walked back into her office to discuss a possible unfair fight in my sleep-deprived state. "Margaret, what seems to be the problem?" I asked. "Do you really need me to explain to you why it's uncouth to denigrate homeless people?" "I'm not denigrating them. I'm just magnifying the issue so people are more aware of it. I'm urging the readers to be part of a solution." "Then why are there jokes in here? A lot of homeless people have mental health problems. Do you find that funny, Mr. Van Zandt?" "No, of course not. But why can't you make light of things that need serious solutions? You want people to walk around being depressed all the time? Jokes are a healthy reaction. You know what you can't make jokes about? Things that are going really well. Things that don't need improvement. You can't make fun of low gas prices. It's not funny. We like low gas prices. You know what else is unfunny? A good economy. Jokes bring attention to problems and things that need fixing. That's the whole point of the article, to build awareness." "Yeah, but Chris, I'm not denouncing homeless people, but I don't feel the need to be politically correct either. No one is reading another Feed the Homeless article. They'll skip over it. But if you talk about how they spend their street-earned dollars on opium and malt liquor, yelling at mailboxes and pissing themselves, it might resonate. Margaret's eyes flickered as her face remained inexpressive, waiting for me to finish. She responded with specific examples. In one line, you mentioned how an overweight homeless man asked you for money the other day so he could, and you quote, get something to eat. And you responded, you look pretty well fed to me. You don't think that is offensive, Chris? No, I do not. The truth hurts, but it is funny. That guy wasn't looking for a sandwich. Even if he was, I'm telling a story that makes the readers feel something for that man, some form of sadness, maybe invokes action. In another line, you said downtown looked like a constant dope fiend 5K marathon and made several references to Oscar the Grouch. Also funny. Then you go on to chastise middle-class people. That's the majority of our readership, Margaret exclaimed. Right, but I'm middle class. That's why I can say those things, like a Jewish person making jokes about being a Jew. There was a moment of silence as her face now withered with disgust. I continued, as a writer, I believe in free speech. So do you have actual remarks on the article that can improve it? Any structural or linguistic issues? If you want to put your name on this filth, I will make it as grammatically correct as possible, she said tiredly. I smiled. Thanks, Margaret. I look forward to seeing your edits.